for those of you online that didn't just hear Dave's announcement, because I had it muted, we'll actually be starting here in a couple minutes. Our president was just running a minute late, so he's here now. Give us just a sec. We'll get going.
So this is on? Too much? Too little? Is it loud enough? You need it louder. Hey, Bernie. Okay. It's obviously hard from up here to see, but anyway, I sound pretty good to myself, so I don't know. I'm back here in Colorado. I just came in from Los Angeles and through a traffic jam, so I apologize for being late. I actually was thinking that I've been doing this for 36 of these things, and this is the only one I've been late for, and it's my last one. So anyway, I guess we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's see, we got the secretary here. This is our annual meeting, and we'll call the meeting to order from that standpoint. We're required to have a meeting annually, and I'm kind of a bit of a historian, like most of you guys, you know. So, in reading some of the past things, I think there's some other ex-presidents here and folks that have been around here for a long time. And well, my membership card goes back to 1982. I was never very active. I paid dues and went on a few trips and enjoyed the rail report and being a member, but I never was very active. But in the early days, there were a lot of obviously, I don't want to say fights, but there was a lot of board issues and sometimes officer issues about money and treasurer's reports and bylaws and everything else that happened that were pretty interesting. And the Dan Edwards, Dan here, yeah, your book. I started to read your book, and I wasn't really into it, but I had to buy it since you published it and autographed it. But it is really fascinating. Those guys in the 1940s, you know, were younger men. They started the club, and then some of them went off to war, you know, and it's fascinating reading some of that stuff, but they were just diehard rail fans. I mean, if there was any place there were two pieces of steel together, they found it, you know. So I've only read part of it, but given that railroads were all over the world, it's probably pretty interesting. So anyway, I highly recommend the book if somebody's looking for something different in railroad books. So anyway, we need to have our annual meeting, and since okay, well, I'm Mr. Sharp.
Just was going to ask everybody to put your cell phones on silent or stun or something like that, so we don't disrupt this highly ostentatious annual meeting.
Thank you. I guess I didn't have my mask totally down, but in compliance with what the facility and the pastor would like here, I'm appreciative of everybody wearing their masks. So I hope that most of us have gotten through it. I had it a year ago and had all the shots, so hopefully we won't have to play with it again, but we'll see. Anyway, we really need to do the election. Why don't we do that, and then we'll do some of the call-up stuff, and then we've got a neat little program tonight. And then we've got cookies and pop for afterwards for some Christmas mingling. And most of it's individually wrapped. Some of it isn't. And the cans are small. So hopefully we'll kind of comply with everybody's need to be safe. So anyway, we don't do a treasurer's report in this meeting, but I think you've seen, we did a report a few rail reports ago. I am happy to say that the budget is in balance this year from what we thought, and we need to do that. And I'm going to make a plea a bit for a few bucks. If you've got a couple at the end of the year, you can send the Historical Foundation, because that starts to replenish that money. And I think we do some neat things with those $1,000 grants. It goes to people that can't really get other grants. And it's kind of fun if you're out around the mountains. I run into our signs every place. Sometimes I forget where we even gave money to put up signs. And a few old box cars have gotten stabilized and a bunch of other stuff. So from that standpoint, we do need to read the minutes from the last uh, meeting last year.
I would
Um,
like to move that we dispense with reading the minutes as published in the rail report.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second to dispense with reading the minutes. Yeah, Nathan made the,
Sorry, you have to tell us your name because we don't, with the mask, we're lost. Thank you.
thank you.
And Michael, let us know if we're doing this all in the proper order. Because some years we've forgotten some small details. Technicality.
I think we, yeah, we need to do them separately. I think everybody knows that we have the two. Yeah, yes. So we'll do the club first. And there's a motion on the floor to dispense with the reading of the minutes from last year. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we'll skip the minutes. I think actually they were published in the rail report, weren't they? So if you're overly curious, there's a way to get to them. So and then the business that we have at hand this year is the election of officers for 2022 and 3 new board members. And I don't know who's got the list. I know that the officers that have been nominated are Andy Dell for president and Dave for continuing on as vice president, and Keith is been nominated to be the treasurer again, and Steve Suber has been nominated to be the secretary. And I think he had some eye surgery today. I didn't see Steve. I had an email from him earlier today, so I think he's on the broadcast. But in any case, it's very proper if there's any other motions from the floor for any of those 4 officers. This would be a time to make that.
This is your big chance. If Bernie, would you like to get back on the board?
Fame and fortune, you know. It really has been a joy to do, actually. So, pardon? Yes. Right, and I'm not sure who those 2 are. Have you got that? Debbie and Pat? Okay. And then Nathan. Oh, man. For that board position, yeah. Are there any other nominations for any of the positions? Okay, I guess hearing none, we need to. I don't know that I really need I guess I need a motion to vote on those.
Yeah, so I guess we'd be voting on the slate of names that were published in the
Right.
most recent newsletter. Moved by Ron Kaiser. Second by Nathan Holmes.
Yes. No discussion on this. Is there any, all in favor? Those candidates opposed? Okay, well, congratulations. And I think they'll, don't get off track, Andy, come on. I've enjoyed leading this club and being really involved in it, and we'll continue. We did a bylaws change that the president will serve on the board for a year coming off of his term, which I think makes good sense in terms of continuity and everything. So we'll still be pretty active in it, and it's good to get some other new faces in. I think it's good. You need to rotate through on this stuff, and we're getting a few younger people in, and that's what we need to do. And obviously, we want to continue to do it. You know, the clubs, we kind of have help support a little bit youth and model railroading because there's some kids coming up there that's got interest in, and on the other line on a couple of things, I stopped over at the N-Scale Supply at 55th sort of and Lamar in Arvada, and they've got a fairly decent little store started there and adding a lot of gauge stuff. So if you're looking for some actually shopping experience with model railroading and not just all off of the internet, there is a store back in town, and I can't tell you, Scott and Steve, I don't know their last names. I met them both, but they're two young, nice guys, and they got a fairly good sized store there that's probably at least as big as this room. And they're starting to get more and more stuff stocked in there, and they've got some consignment stuff in there like Caboose did. So if you're out that area and you're looking for something, it's a good place to stop in. I can't tell you what their hours are exactly, but I think they have a website. So 10 to 6 days a week. Yeah. Okay. It's called N-Scale Supply. Well, they changed. Okay. Thanks, Ron. Rocky Mountain Train Supply.
Before we get too far off track, do we need to do the election or did we do it all together?
Yeah, but let me close the club meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, is there any other new business for the club, Rocky Mountain Railroad Club? Okay. Nathan has moved that we adjourn the meeting and Ron has seconded it. I preempted. I saw you with your hand up before. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to get involved with the club and all you guys. So I appreciate that. So anyway, we need to vote to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club meeting is adjourned at 7:55. So in doing that, then I will call to order the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club, Rocky Mountain Railroad Historical Foundation, excuse me, get this right, meeting, the annual meeting. And the treasurer's report on that is basically that we have around $55,000, and we've been giving away sort of $5,000 a year. I'm pretty on target with that, yeah. And we have had some donations back in, so it's picked up a little bit. And the club probably will donate a bit to it this year too from our Como, little Como thing. We didn't make a lot up there, but made some up there. So anyway, the minutes of the Historical Foundation annual meeting last year need to be read. Nathan. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to dispense with reading the minutes. And there's a second. From Dan, yeah, okay. All in favor of dispensing with the reading of the minutes? Opposed? Okay. As everybody knows, the slate of officers that was proposed for the club also serves as the officers and board for the Historical Foundation. So those members have been elected, but it is proper if anybody has any other nominations for the Historical Foundation to do that at this point. Okay, hearing none, close the nominations. And I suppose we need a motion to close the nominations. We probably really do. So, will somebody make that motion? Okay. Okay. Nathan did. Oh. Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Nominations are closed. So the slate of officers for the Historical Foundation would be Andy and Dave and Keith and Steve Suber and Nathan Zachman and Debbie McDonald and Pat Maurer. All in favor of that slate of officers? Opposed? Okay, they're elected. Congratulations. And is there any other new business for the foundation? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned for the Historical Foundation. So, wow, there we go. Okay. Yeah, it was a gavel. I don't know how many people saw this, but this was given to us this summer when they did the 20 rollout at the museum. And I've had it in my house because I got it at that point, but and we weren't meeting here. So I brought it down here so everybody could look at it if they wanted to. We obviously, the big donation we made was the engine. So there was some other serious money. I don't know if I know for sure how much money that thing cost, but 1.2 million or something when it was all done, something what I heard. Huh? So it was a lot, yeah. Anyway, but it is a sweet engine. If anybody got down to Antonito and Chama this summer, oh my gosh, this thing just runs like a jewel. So I don't know. I get around some and I know Bernie and get out to his shop occasionally. I don't know if you did the any appliances on the 20 or not, but I know you're doing lots of them on lots of other engines, which is really cool. So
the 20's been pretty busy the last few weeks doing Polar Express out at the Railroad Museum in Golden.
Yeah, I'll bet. So anyway, I'm going to leave this here for like afterwards if anybody wants to see it. And then I don't know, somehow we're going to get it, I guess, down to World Headquarters because that's where it needs to be. So anyway, from that standpoint. And I guess I don't really have anything else at the moment. Dave, please.
Do we have any new guests or visitors that haven't been here before? Probably not. We don't. For those of you playing at home, for those of you playing at home, you can't see the size of the crowd, but we do have a few folks here. Yeah, tell us who you are and how you found us.
Hi, my friend here, Don Leach, knows Roger. And
Roger Sherman.
yeah, so
Okay.
Roger had invited him to come, but Don's been here before, and so I came. Don.
Well, we're glad you're here. Welcome aboard, welcome aboard, or welcome in for the visit. So, anybody else that's a first timer here? All right. I'll make a quick announcement about our upcoming programs. Our January program was going to be presented by Brad Swartzwelter, who is a Amtrak conductor, but he will probably end up running back to Chicago to supervise getting the cars lined up for the Winter Park Express. So he will probably now do the program in February. And our friend Chip Sherman has stepped up to do a show for us in January. And then this gives me a chance to call on Chip for like the railroad update of all the things going on around here. And Chip, you can also give us a little preview of your show. Actually, if you want to come up here, then all the folks at home can see you. And, you know, they're on the edge of their seat right now, as you know, just, you know, because this is a pretty sparkling meeting, but
Oh, yeah.
here we are.
Hi, folks. Hey, good news. Rocky Mountaineer. Oh, I'm sorry. I hope I'm in the shot. Too high, too low. Anyways, Rocky Mountaineer had a very good year this year. They've brought a locomotive from Canada, just arrived in Denver Sunday morning. It's in a newer paint scheme than the other Rocky Mountaineer locomotives. It'll be used around 36th Street to help them with their maintenance program that they're going to do on the 14 cars that they have here for storage during the winter. Rocky Mountaineer will also send another locomotive down here probably in March or April. So they'll have their own full consist and their own equipment. Right now, they expect to do some maintenance over here at 36th Street in Denver. You might see a little tent go up, one of those, what do you want to call it, temporary facilities. They also had a very, very good year, more passengers than they anticipated. So they'll resume operations in April and run until October 2022. Meanwhile, down there at the Canyon City and Royal Gorge, Mark, the owner, has picked up his own private car. It's the old Sierra Hotel, if you're familiar with that. It was I believe a dormitory lounge car used by the CB&Q. And it was converted with a rear viewing platform, and it's been sold by its owner to Mark down at the Canyon City Royal Gorge. And they hope to do some modifications and put it on their train later in 2022. Also this year, normally they've run F units on their Santa trains that start in November. This year, because they've picked up not one, but 3 SD40 type locomotives, they're now running with only 1 locomotive on the west end. And obviously they're not using 2 or more engines, so they're saving a lot of fuel. So no F units right now. Hopefully they'll come back and use them on special trains, but if you're looking for an F unit in the Royal Gorge, not today. Also, the Bnsf, good news. California wants some Canadian grain. There have been numerous trains coming down from Sweetgrass, Montana through Denver. They're usually notable in terms of Canadian Pacific Power. For example, there was one of them sitting over there at what they call Hogan's Alley next to I-25 this weekend. They usually stop there for fuel and then, of course, run down the joint line and head for places like Modesto, California, or Fresno, California. And by the way, if you're into Donner Pass, they're getting about 5 to 6 feet of snow, and the spreaders have been out keeping the tracks open over Donner Pass. So any questions? Good, everybody's happy. Hey, enjoy the holidays, folks.
Thank you, Chip. Do any other announcements? We probably should get on with our show. Thank you for your patience for our late start, but we do have to do our annual election once a year. It's what keeps us whole and legal, I guess, something like that. Anyway, Kevin Morgan is here to give us a program and teach us a little bit about the world of drones. That seems to be a very popular thing these days, having drone photography. Just for the people that are watching at home, I'll just do a quick announcement. I'm Dave Schaff, Vice President. This is Denny Leonard, who's our outgoing president. And I just took the mask down so you can see who these people are. Come on up, Kevin.
Thanks, Dave. Cool. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you very much. I know a lot of you know who I am, or maybe you know my website, Colorado Railfan. I'll just do a brief background on myself for those of you that may not know me. Lifelong Colorado native, and got into trains allegedly when I was about 2 weeks old, according to my dad. I oddly enough don't have specific memories of that, but that's what I've been told at least. He was very much into train photography and started taking me out from day one pretty much. So I was raised on the Rio Grande in the 80s and 90s. So tunnel motors and whatnot, that's kind of my jam. Not that they're around anymore, but you know, if they were, they'd still be my jam. And so I thought it would be kind of interesting to just try and put together a show on drone photography specifically as it relates to trains and train photography. I've done the digital SLR and whatnot for years and years and years, and just recently started doing the drone stuff. I've always been interested in flying. As a matter of fact, right now I'm in the middle of working on my private pilot's license in addition, but the drone photography has been really interesting. So certainly the focus tonight, I want to obviously make most about trains. However, kind of my goal here is to show some pictures as well as hopefully on some of the pictures, you know, talk about some of the information in them and whatnot. But I also, toward the end, I wanted to just talk a little bit about what's involved in just drones in general and as it relates to trains specifically, and go into a little airplane-esque content as well. Talk about, there's a lot of questions, you know, what do you need to do to be able to fly a drone? Do you need special authorizations? All that kind of stuff. I thought we'd just talk about that a little bit toward the end. But for that, I think we can go ahead and at least go through the slideshow to start. I'm going to move back here so I can see my next slides over Nathan's shoulder here. Sweet. So I thought that I would really just start with the Moffett because, like I said, I was raised on Rio Grande, and so I thought that would be a good place to kind of make the main focus of the content here tonight. And I also decided to put together all of the slides in geographic order. So kind of starting at North Yard and making our way west. And I put together all shots that I took in 2020. So all these are shots from varying times in 2020. And right off the bat, one of the best parts about being able to use a drone is definitely being able to, my clicker is not clickering. There we go. Being able to get to places that you cannot otherwise get to, or at least not otherwise legally get to. And with the drone, it's great because the rules in the United States are that the FAA controls all of the airspace. So even above something like North Yard, Union Pacific may own the ground, but they do not own the air above the ground. And so there is nothing legally to prevent you from going in like this shot of UP 1996 over at the Ready Tracks at North Yard and getting a shot like this. If you even look on UP's website, they say that you cannot lift off or land on their property, but they say otherwise to just essentially be respectful and do not be a distraction and do not be a safety hazard. So don't fly over people, for example, which in this case, there wasn't a soul to be found in this particular area. And another shot, it's really pretty great being able to just get a different perspective. For me, that's been the biggest thing using a drone. I've heard from some people that using a drone is cheating because you don't have to do hiking as much and whatnot. I would argue, I mean, there's something to be said for that, but I would also argue that that drone photography brings its own unique challenges. One of the biggest is that being used to, you know, a digital SLR where when you actually press the shutter, press the trigger, that's the shot you're going to get. Drones are more like the original digital cameras of the day where right when you pushed it there was a delay and it would get it, or you know, maybe it would get it where you thought it was going to get it, maybe it wouldn't get it where you thought it was going to get it. So it brings its own challenges, but the perspectives that you can get out of it are kind of unlike anything else that you can, you know, get from the ground, obviously. I don't do a whole lot of video. The drone I have can do 4K video, as we're seeing here, just kind of flying over North Yard. I've tried to do more video, but the simple fact is that in my heart, I'm a photographer and I'm not a videographer in my heart. And so photography is just kind of where my passion is. But I did throw a couple of brief movies in here just to kind of show some of the capabilities and whatnot down there at North Yard. I got a yard job doing a little switching and whatnot. So we'll go ahead and we'll move up here to the north end. This was a wind train that was coming in off of the belt and crossing over the Moffett, coming into North Yard off of the belt. And this was a fun day because I believe it was 108 out. And the drone actually does pretty well in temperature extremes. I didn't have any issues with it on this day when it was 108. Another perspective that I'm sure everybody will recognize from North Yard up at Utah Junction and the classic signal bridge. This was the Grand Junction to North Yard train coming in off of the Moffett, the grain tower back there in the background, and the same train, but with a view actually looking right at the signal bridge there at Utah Junction, which is kind of nice. One of the best parts also about having a drone for doing photography is that you can always find the best angle for light. It's really nice. You're never on the wrong side of the tracks, or if you are, you can always get to the right side of the tracks. Continuing west, I intentionally included this particular shot. I don't know if you are familiar with this. If people that maybe if you live in the Arvada area, I live in the Arvada area, you might know this. This is 72nd Avenue on the Moffett. It's just east of Leiden. And I specifically included this shot because this is a scene that is going to be wildly changing over the course of about the next 2 years. Arvada passed a ballot issue 2 years ago, I believe, in 2018, 2019. They're actually going to lower 72nd Avenue here. And this is going to actually become 4 lanes, and it's going to go underneath the tracks and take out one of the crossings going west before you get to Leiden. So my intention, they're doing preliminary work right now. They haven't started digging trenches or anything like that, but my intention is to try to come out here on a regular basis once they really start getting into it and getting some shots. I assume they're going to have to build a shoe fly first for the tracks and start building the trench so they can build a bridge and then move the tracks back over. But it's going to be kind of an interesting process to watch over the next couple of years. Continuing a little bit further west here, this is just west of 72nd Avenue and just a nice morning shot of the Zephyr in the summertime when the sun is far enough around to actually get a decent shot of the Zephyr coming west toward Leiden. And then at the east end of Leiden there, jumping to winter, we have a UP oil train that is coming off the main. This shot is, I kind of looked at it and I said, I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. And it's because obviously you got some blur there. It's a little harder with a drone, kind of another one of the challenges. It can be a challenge just controlling your shutter speed and your aperture. It's certainly doable, but it's a little harder to know just exactly what the results are going to get. So here, obviously I had a slower shutter speed. And so the head end of the Zephyr coming out of on the main there at Leiden is a little blurred, but it's a nice sunset. So I still thought that it was a pretty decent shot to go ahead and include. Moving a little further west, this was, I believe, around the 4th of July in 2020, or on the 4th of July in 2020, the Eastbound Zephyr under some pretty fantastic stormy skies in the afternoon. And then just a little bit further west, this is an area that if you haven't been out there in a while, has changed a lot. This neighborhood over here, this is Leiden Ranch, and a little bit further is Leiden Rock. And over here, there's now storage. Has anybody noticed that storage facilities are just springing up absolutely everywhere? It is crazy how popular those things have become. So just west of Leiden along Highway 72 now, I think there are 2 new storage facilities that have been built right there. In addition to the new neighborhood that started construction, I believe, about 8 years ago, Leiden Ranch and Leiden Rock. This is a shot that used to be a little easier to get before they rebuilt the bridge over the west end of Barber's Gulch, when you could walk out on the bridge a little easier. Now they got all the guardrails and everything in place. It's a little harder unless you maybe have a ladder to actually get a shot of a westbound approaching Rocky, unless you can just fly there, which is the case here. I believe this was a Bnsf empty, or maybe it's a loaded sand train. I think it was going for oil at the west end of Barber's Gulch, just coming up to Highway 93. Included a couple of shots of the West Local, or what's left of the West Local. It used to run Oh gosh, it used to run Tuesdays and Thursdays pretty regularly. And when Rocky Flats actually first shut down, boy, this train could be 60 cars long and had 4 Jeeps on it for a couple of years. But now with Rocky Flats all cleaned up and only one industry still left on the branch, it's not quite as great. As you can see, there's 3 hoppers, and UP is now only running it as needed on Wednesdays. And as needed is usually defined as roughly once a month. So it does not run particularly often anymore. So I enjoyed the opportunity to go out there and get shots. I kind of enjoy this shot because at first glance, you may not even be able to really tell that it was taken using a drone. It's kind of fun sometimes getting a little bit closer to the ground, but in areas that are not necessarily easily accessible. And you can get some fun shots with that. And right after he backed out onto the main, he started heading back toward Denver. So just hovered down near that east switch of Rocky to get a shot of him as he was heading back toward Denver. Moving on, I got quite a few shots here from around Little 10 and Big 10 loops because it is very close to my house. So it's nice taking maybe a little longer lunch break and being able to jump over there if I know that there are trains in the area. And it's just been fun exploring Big 10 and Little 10 from the air because I kind of feel like I've shot it from every possible angle on the ground. Again, living so close to it. It's kind of fun being able to try to find new angles and whatnot from the air. This was October of 2020 and UP 1943 was actually called out because I believe the lead unit on the North Yard to Grand Junction train died, and they swapped it out with 1943 to get it going the rest of the way west. This was also, I believe, July 4th of last year, and this was a monster Grand Junction to North Yard train that spanned pretty much from the west switch of Rocky all the way up to the east switch of Clay, Isley, whatever you want to call it. I still call it Clay. Had a ton of empty center beam flats back there for lumber, and I believe it was 9,100 feet long. And UP does this from time to time. They still do it from time to time. Ever since they took the North Yard to Grand Junction train from 6 days a week to 3 days a week, it's not uncommon to find some very long manifests out there sometimes. And keeping with our Big 10 focus here, just a nice shot of a empty Bnsf coal train coming out of Rocky, starting to climb up to Big 10. This was a shot that I'd actually really wanted to get for a long time, and I was really happy when it finally happened to be able to have a westbound and an eastbound, neither of which is facing east or west because they're both facing south. As the westbound on the bottom is climbing out of Rocky to meet the eastbound that is currently, I believe, holding the main up at Clay in the distance. That's a great question. So Joe asked, where was I located for taking these pictures? For those of you familiar with the area, I have found that the best place to get these shots is if you're going west on Highway 72, just past 93. And when the road starts to bend to the right to head toward Plain and all that stuff, there's a little pull off on the south side. That's almost a little dirt parking lot. It's not actually a parking lot, but it's a little dirt area right when the road starts to bend kind of to the northwest there. That's usually where I'll park, just on. Nope. I'm not anywhere. I'm not even down toward Rocky. I'm actually above on the plateau, just pretty much on the shoulder of Highway 72. So to that end, I've taken my drone as far as almost 2 miles away from my physical location. And my drone has, knock on wood, so far not had any issues with transmission at a range of almost 2 miles away. So I can actually get up to the east switch of Clay from that spot on Highway 72 without any issues. And in fact, I think we're going to get there. A UP special climbing up toward Big 10. And I believe the next shot is the exact same scene, except slightly different time of year. And again, still similar perspective. This was actually the same train from a few shots ago, just showing the UP train climbing up Big 10. And if you look, you can actually see that the Bnsf guy sitting up there at Clay waiting on him to show up. And an eastbound coal train coming out of Clay just coming around Big Ten. It's easy to forget how much of a straightaway there is on the south leg of Big Ten right there, because you can't really see it very well from anywhere on the ground. And it always surprises me how much of a straightaway there actually is back there coming out of Clay. And then to the point of the east switch of Clay, this is close to 2 miles away from that spot off of Highway 72 with this BNSF coal load coming out of Clay and heading toward Big Ten. And I believe this next shot is again of that meet at Clay. That was just kind of fun. This is the kind of thing where, unless you happen to have an overpass nearby, it's a little harder to get to. So I always make sure to keep obviously safety in mind, and specifically the crews of these trains in mind. I don't want to do something. I don't want to fly somewhere with the drone that's going to potentially, spook them or alarm them or anything like that. So even with this shot, I'm not over the main, but as soon as I got this shot, I pretty much hit the stick to move the drone off to the left so that it was nowhere near the main as soon as that westbound came by. And just another shot from the east end of Clay, just a little bit higher up. And toward the west end of Clay now, with a westbound UP coal empty with a nice Norfolk Southern catfish surprise second in the consist. And the actual west switch of Clay, another place that is, it's certainly doable. You can get there on foot. There's a lot of open space in that area, but it's also kind of satisfying when you're on a 30-minute lunch break or something like that to be able to park on the shoulder and just fly up there and get a quick shot. And coming out from the grade crossing at Blue Mountain. And this was June 24th of 2020. The next shot, I don't believe it was the same day, and it's not the same train, but it's very close by. This was June 15th of 2020. So just a little bit further to the west there, coming around the horseshoe and S-curve at Coal Creek, at the base of Coal Creek. Starting the climb up to Tunnel 1. I'm sure all of these are probably very familiar for most of you. This next shot was a really fun one to get. This next shot is one that is doable, not quite from this perspective, but is doable with a lot of hiking. So that was all. I think that was also July 4th. That July 4th of 2020 ended up being a really good day on the Moffett. I got some really good stuff happen in the morning and in the afternoon. So for that, I'm at the pullout right there by the bridge, just west of the bridge. Coming up to Tunnel 1. Yeah, right. I'm not the best of shape. So the last time I actually tried to race a train up to Tunnel 1 almost killed me. So this is a whole lot nicer. For these shots at Tunnel 1, I usually either park in the little parking lot at Plain, at just the very bottom of Plain there, by those hiking trails, or even just off on the shoulder of Highway 72 right below Tunnel 1. Evening light is just fantastic on the west side of Tunnel 1. So I've kind of enjoyed getting some elevated shots of eastbounds in the evening. Granted, these days Amtrak is about the only thing that's ever eastbound in the evenings, but still it makes for some pretty decent shots and some good light over there. No. So not at the overpass for this one. This one, I think I was probably parked in the little parking lot down there at Plain. This was a great opportunity. This is June 11th of 2020, and that is the Eastbound Zephyr, and that's definitely not evening light. This was one of those wonderful times when the Zephyr was 14 hours late. So not so great for the passengers, but really great for the photographers that want to get a shot of the Eastbound Zephyr in good morning light. Same basic spot, of course, coming out of Tunnel 1. Lots of shots here from the ground on the other side of the tracks for the most part. And then the same basic spot, but once again, we'll just flip it over to winter. And it's funny I say that we flip it over to winter. This was actually summer because we live in Colorado. This was September 10th of 2020 when we got one of those really, really early snows. And eastbound coal load coming out of Plain. And the next couple of shots are a lot of fun because you can really get some cool stuff as you start to get into the tunnel district. Some wonderful things that you just can't do on foot. So got a great shot of this. I think this is actually a westbound. I think that was a single DPU on a westbound. I don't remember right now, but snaking its way through tunnels 2 and 3 and 4 right over there on the right side of the frame. Same basic perspective, but looking to the east with the westbound Zephyr coming out of plane about to go into tunnel 2. And jump just a little bit further west and we get a westbound Zephyr on a different morning. And this one, of course, approaching tunnel 3. This being the fantastic cut, or I'm sorry, the fantastic fill that washed out in, what was that, 2013, I think? Yeah, 2013, when we had the 500-year floods in the Denver area. This is tunnel 5 right here. So unless you really want to go on a hike, this is not easy to get to. And it's taken a little bit of time because with a drone, it's really important to maintain line of sight. First off, it's required that you technically have line of sight. As far as FAA goes, you have to have line of sight. But beyond that, you're going to lose transmission and reception immediately if you lose that line of sight. So I have managed to mark various places on Plainview Road, going all the way up to the road where I can get a line of sight on tunnels 2, 3, 4, 5 to be able to try to get some shots like this. And this is tunnel 7. Tunnel 7 is right back there, and we're about to curve into tunnel 8. For this, I actually had to find a spot up in El Dorado to park at in order to get up there to tunnel 7. And I had to get about just over 1,000 feet in elevation in order to get this shot. And we'll get into this. The FAA requires that you stay within 400 feet of the ground, but that's 400 feet of the ground beneath the drone. So it was 1,000 feet above me, but I was still within 400 feet or less of the ground beneath the drone. Jumping up to Crescent, get a shot of the Zephyr on the main at Crescent. And then the eastbound Zephyr at the west switch of Crescent, looking back toward tunnel 19. The next one of my personal favorites, a nice shot of the westbound Zephyr coming out of Crescent with Gross Reservoir in the background, just about to dive into tunnel 19. This was a crapshoot. One of the other challenges with the drone is you've got somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes of useful battery life. So 20 to 30 minutes of useful flight time. So in this particular situation, when you can't always hear something on the scanner and you don't necessarily know exactly where your train is, you kind of roll the dice a little bit as to whether or not you're going to run out of battery before the train shows up. I lucked out in this particular instance because for this, I had line of sight on the drone, but I couldn't see the tracks at all. Just parked on Gross Dam Road there. Further in the tunnel district, that's tunnel 26 right there. For anybody familiar with the very tragic eastbound derailment that happened there, I believe in 1991, where an eastbound manifest hit some fallen rocks and rolled down this embankment right here, and two gentlemen lost their lives. There's a plaque on the west portal of tunnel 26 right there, dedicating in memory to them. Something like that. Yeah. I've heard a lot of different things as to what the cause was, but nobody checked the rails for the rocks, and it resulted in that derailment. Obviously, again, something else that you can really only do from the air. This is right at the west portal of tunnel 27, pretty much looking straight down on the westbound Zephyr as it kind of snakes its way through the trees. And the same idea with tunnel 29. And a different morning at tunnel 29 from a view a little closer to the rocks. This is also a shot that isn't impossible to get with a little bit of effort in hiking. This was at East Portal. This was July 7th of 2020, which was, I mean, it's always great when you get an opportunity to get something unique with Amtrak, because it's kind of nice that we have a Zephyr in the morning and a Zephyr in the evening. It's always fun, at least I think it's always fun, when one of them just gets absolutely screwed and they wind up meeting somewhere, especially when they wind up meeting somewhere east of the Moffett. So on this particular evening, they actually met at East Portal, which was kind of cool. And actually coming out of the tunnel there, Eastbound Zephyr. We jump over to the west slope now and we go to Winter Park. This is at the west switch of Winter Park. And it is my goal to get a shot from the same basic area in all seasons. That's my summer shot. This is my fall shot. I have not yet gotten my winter shot from here yet. A little further west to Tabernash. A totally different perspective. Not even something I'd remotely seen before, which was kind of fun from the other side of the river. Another spot, this one, I'll wager that people may not instantly recognize, again, just because of the unique perspective. This is actually in between Granby and Sulphur, where you got US 40 in the background right here. And probably rarer spots to take shots from. I would even call this a secret place. Little Gore Canyon, pretty easy to get shots without too much hiking from the other end, from the east end of Little Gore. A little harder to get shots from the west end of Little Gore. State Bridge coming up toward Bond. This was the last daily Zephyr before COVID knocked it down to 3 times a week at the end of September or the beginning of October of 2020. That same Zephyr, this is just a little bit east of range on the Dot Zero cutoff. And then at the depot in Glenwood. And you can, yeah, obviously we all remember, you can already see the effects of COVID as there wasn't even a baggage car at this point and only 6 superliners. Center of Glenwood, where the west siding starts and goes in toward the yard, had a westbound Bnsf manifest. Same train, look in the other direction there at Glenwood, toward the yard. This is jumping west toward Rifle. There's a bridge that crosses the tracks there going from I-70 connecting into Rifle. And I've kind of wanted to get a shot in that particular area. This was a day that it actually worked out quite nice with Amtrak 184 on the point, that phase 4 heritage unit. And the Eastbound Zephyr at Chakra, a personal favorite sighting of mine. I don't know why, I just think that Chakra is a cool name. So I really like that sighting. And it's really, really unusual to see meets there because UP always has that particular sighting plugged with cars in storage. I don't know what it is. There's a couple of sightings that seem to be like that, but Chakra always has these cars had been in the sighting for months, I think, at this point. And a little bit further west to Grand Valley in the Parachute area. Just that, I think this is that same BNSF train that we saw from Glenwood. So that was it from the Moffett. I thought I would go ahead and just share a couple of other random shots, kind of some of my favorites from places that are not actually on the Moffett. This first one is at Bar Lake. And I enjoy the fact that, you know, for 9 to 10 months out of the year, you can't really get shots of the Eastbound Zephyr at Bar Lake because it's obviously dark. But on the longest days of the year, when the Zephyr's on time, you can get some really nice lit shots out there at Bar Lake. I think this was that same night. There was a coal empty that was not too terribly far behind the Zephyr. And after I took this shot, while the coal empty was passing, I went out over to the left, over here, over what is actually Bar Lake, and got down as low as I could without losing sight of the drone for that shot. Waited for the NDPUs to come by. And then like the next morning, I also wanted to see what it looked like for the morning Zephyr coming west. So that same basic spot as that last shot, but of course with some nice morning light of the westbound Zephyr. And for this, we're actually going to jump out of Colorado. This is up toward the Powder River Basin in Wyoming. This is toward the north end of BNSF's Canyon sub, and this is crossing the North Platte River. My dad and I took a little 4-day journey up there in 2020 just to check out the Powder River Basin a little bit. This is just a little bit further north of that last shot, going up toward the Powder River Basin at the north end of the Canyon sub. every once in a while, it's kind of fun to play with the drone. So the drone that I have has a couple of automatic tracking settings. And so this is one of those settings where you basically have it focus in on an object and you just hit go and it'll do a nice slow spiral out from whatever it is that it's tracking. So I thought it was kind of a good overview of the little hill that we had planted our flag on to wait for something to come along on the quadruple track main, or at this point, kind of the triple track main, because one of the tracks was also being used for storage. This is Antelope Mine and several trains waiting to load and one train that has been loaded that is heading out. And an even better overview of Antelope Mine to get a really good feel for the trains and how they go around the balloon track to go underneath the tipple there and load. One more shot from Antelope with an empty actually heading away from the camera. They're on main 2. Or make that main 3, I guess. A little further north to the Black Thunder, or the West Black Thunder. That's the West Black Thunder loadout, which is relatively new. I think it's probably the newest loadout in the Powder River Basin. Was built, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and had a couple trains come through at the right time, which was kind of nice. And then next we jump up to Gillette, Wyoming and Donkey Creek Yard, where my dad and I were both rather shocked to see just how much unused power Bnsf has laying around. And now granted, this was also the height of COVID, so I'm sure that that had some impact on it. But I think we estimated that there were somewhere between 500 and 600 units that were in storage up there. Have they? Okay. Yeah, so they've been there for years. And then in Edgemont, South Dakota, it was actually the same thing. There's not as many units stored up there. There's not as much space there, but Edgemont, South Dakota had quite a few units in storage too. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So there were 3 tracks that were devoted to these units in storage. Yeah. So I thought it'd be fun to do a video and just kind of go over so many units just sitting there. And from here, we'll move on to Crawford Hill. Kind of a nice overview of Crawford. And Crawford Hill, at least as of 2020, and as far as I know, this is still the case, they use manned helpers on their coal trains to get up over Crawford Hill. So I don't know how well you can see, but there's 3 units back here. There's 1 unit that's a DPU, and then there's 2 manned helpers. And as soon as they get up to the top of Crawford Hill at Belmont, the manned helpers will cut off and they will run back down the hill, and they'll typically cross over. So I decided that this might be kind of a fun, doing a little bit of videography here. They have a diverging clear signal to be able to cross over. And I thought it would be kind of fun to follow along behind them. One downside to video with a drone is that, you know, the props on the drone make so much noise that audio is pretty impractical. If there was audio recording, which there's not, but even if there was, you would really only hear the sound of the props on the drone and not much else. You can actually see me just up there on the bridge at Belmont. And my little drone can go, if there's no headwind, it can get up to about 40 miles an hour. Yeah, so the question is going underneath the concrete bridge. It was a short enough time that I think if it did lose reception, immediately picked it up on the other side. So it didn't end up being an issue. What's that? Yeah, it'll hold the settings. Now, if you do lose line of sight, or for any other reason you happen to lose transmission with your drone, all the drones that I'm aware of at least have a feature called return to home. So when you first take off, they know your exact GPS coordinates. And if they lose transmission for any reason, then they will just fly back automatically to that point from which they took off. Yes, they do have a power sensor, and they will automatically return. You can override it if you need to. If you know you're going to be able to get it back on your own, it'll warn you and say, hey, you should return to home. And you can say, no, I know what I'm doing. I want to keep it out there, and you can override it, but otherwise it'll come back to you. This is Alliance, Nebraska, on that same trip, and not as many units again as up in Gillette, but there were still 2 lines of units, including all those city rail leasers that BNSF got when they didn't have enough power. So rather ironic to now see that all of those, as well as, you know, the better part of 1,000 BNSF units in storage. And one more video a little bit further down at Bridgeport, Nebraska. This was kind of fun. This is a cool place to hang out. This is UP, the Morrill sub, I believe, coming through on here, crossing over with, there's a BNSF train coming around over here, both of which are going to end up heading toward the Powder River Basin, not meeting up until they actually get up there toward the south end. And a pretty impressive car maintenance facility up there at Bridgeport as well. And then I wanted to also show you guys something fun. So as you can see, you never know what you're going to get. I'm just going to play this without any context, just let you guys watch it for a second. So I know some of you saw Nathan just flat out laughed out loud, but so hold on a second here. Hold on a second here. Yeah, because some of you, if you didn't catch that, yeah, we'll take another look and we'll slow it down. The engineer apparently did not appreciate. He did not appreciate my enthusiasm for trains, and he tried to knock my drone out of the air. So yeah, you never quite know what it is that you're going to get. Cool. So like I said, I wanted to show you guys some pictures, but I also wanted to just spend a few minutes and just talk to you guys a little bit about drones and about their use and what you need to know about them and whatnot. Some of the rules, some of the safety, how do you use them? The first thing for anybody that might possibly be interested in getting into the world of drones, I'm going to show you 3 drones that I personally would recommend. The first being the DJI Mavic Mini 2 is a really good introduction into the drone world. So that's about $600 right now for what they call their Fly More package, which gives you a couple extra batteries and whatnot. And as you can see from the top right, it really is mini. This was the first drone I had, and it is very small and very compact. And so the transmission isn't quite as good, and it's a little harder to keep stable, but it's a very good little drone. The drone I currently have, the Mavic Air 2, is a pretty decent mid-range drone, and it runs for about $1,000 right now. Again, for the Fly More package, which gives you some extra batteries and whatnot. And then if you really want to just dive into the deep end and you don't care so much about the price, the DJI Mavic 3, which is a pro model, just came out, I think, in September. And it is, let's just say my wife won't let me get it. Yeah, I know. It actually has 2 cameras mounted on the front here instead of the traditional just 1 camera. So you actually got different focal lengths available in it. It has more sensors. It has, I believe, close to a 40-minute airtime. The battery will last close to 40 minutes. Yeah, the question is where one of the cameras is zoom. I don't remember. The DJI does make a drone with a zoom camera. I don't remember if the Pro 3 does or not. So this is just kind of a quick look at laws and guidance for flying drones. unmanned aerial systems, UAS, in the United States. Some of the big ones are can't go higher than 400 feet above the ground, and obstacles. They actually do include that and obstacles, because you could technically, for example, fly over a building, like even a skyscraper. You could fly over the top of the skyscraper as long as you stay within 400 feet of the skyscraper, alongside or over and top above it. Don't fly in bad weather. You can't fly in clouds. Don't fly near emergency response. Don't fly near stadiums or sporting events. A lot of that is pretty common knowledge. Don't fly over people. This is as in people just walking around, because, you know, drones, like anything, can fail. And the last thing you want is a drone falling out of the sky and landing on somebody's head and causing an injury. So the only exception to that is if the people have given you consent to actually fly over them. So if you're at a birthday party or something like that and you want to get some video from the air and everybody says, yeah, sure, that's totally fine, then it's okay. And you cannot fly in national parks. So this is more of the airplane side of things here briefly, but I thought it was interesting, so I thought I would talk about it here for a minute. For those that are not familiar with how airspace in the United States works, there are several different classes of airspace. There's A, B, C, D, E, and G. And you can kind of see how they're laid out right here. Most of the airspace in the United States is what's called Class E, which is controlled airspace, but there's very minimal requirements for actually entering into that airspace. The airspace along the ground, for the most part, unless there's an airport around, is Class G. That is basically defined as uncontrolled airspace. There are absolutely no requirements in terms of communicating with air traffic control or anything like that when you are within Class G airspace. That doesn't only apply to drones, that applies to airplanes too. If you can get into Class G airspace, you don't need a radio on board, you do not need a transponder, you do not need anything to fly inside of Class G airspace. Then around airports, you've got Class D, C, and B. And basically these are based on the size of the airport. So the smallest airports with control towers are Class D, mid-size is Class C, and the largest are Class B. For reference, there is only one Class C airport in Colorado, and that's actually Colorado Springs. And there's also only one Class B airport in Colorado, and that of course is DIA. Everything else in Colorado is Class D or Class E. And as you can see, you can't go above 400 feet unless you're going to go around something. And that's going to pretty much keep you inside of that Class G airspace. The exception being is if you are within the airspace for one of these other airports. And what I'll show you guys here in a minute, close to where I am, and actually around Leiden, the east end of Leiden is actually in the airspace for the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport up in Broomfield. And so you cannot take off using a drone legally without authorization from the FAA, for example, at that east switch of Leiden. You actually have to have authorization from the FAA before you can take off there. Each flight. Well, so the question was, do you have to do that for each flight? The answer is, I will show you. It's basically when you go to file, you file a flight plan and you say how long you're planning to fly. You can take off as many times as you want within that time frame. The west switch, actually the west switch of Leiden falls under that Class D airspace as well. All of Leiden falls within that Class D airspace. And actually what we're talking about right here, this is kind of a top-down view. This is the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. So that's the Class D airspace. This is Centennial, right over not too far from us. So this of course is DIA up here. So anytime you are in that particular area, you're going to need authorization from the FAA legally before you can take off. And then I did mention Colorado Springs in the purple here. This is the Class C airspace down there in Colorado Springs. And there are lots of places, mainly national parks, where you are not allowed to take off at all. Now, I mentioned a little bit ago that the FAA owns or controls all of the airspace. While it does say in the rules that you can't fly in national parks, actually, legally, you can, because it's the National Park Service that has made that rule about not flying in the parks, but they don't own the airspace. They only own the ground. What that means is if you are standing outside of Rocky Mountain National Park, you can legally fly into Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, you're not going to get very far, right? Because you only got about a 2-mile range or so on your drone. But legally, if you're standing outside the boundaries of a national park, you can fly into the national park You just can't take off, land, or control your drone from within a national park. So the question would be, what's the point of that rule? I think the official reason is they don't want to disturb the animals or other visitors to the national parks. I think that's the official line from the National Park Service. Yeah, so the question is, do restricted areas show up on your screen? The answer is yes. So one example here is this very, very, very small little rectangle down here. That is not normally restricted airspace. That was, when I took this screenshot, restricted airspace due to firefighting operations. So if there is some restricted airspace, a sporting event would be another example. If there's a sporting event happening, you would see that show up on here as well. Yep. Temporary flight restriction, a TFR. Any temporary flight restrictions will show up in the app. So with that, I've got just a video I wanted to show you guys real quick here. I'll let Nathan switch over to it. It was a video I filmed, and I apologize. I hope you guys can hear it okay. It was actually, it's outside and it's along 80th Avenue. So there's a little bit of car noise as they pass from time to time. But I just wanted to show you guys the process of getting authorization from the FAA in order to fly in controlled airspace. Switch of Leiden. Yeah. So I'm right off of 80th Avenue, just on the north side of 80th Avenue, right near the tracks there, just west of the grade crossing for this video. The tracks are just behind me here, off and over to the left. And we're looking to actually launch the drone so that we can get some shots of the tracks around that east switch of Leiden. Now, whenever we launch the drone, obviously safety is first and foremost. As it happens, there are actually some power lines nearby, so we're going to be really careful when launching to avoid those and not come anywhere near those. But the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we are always following the rules, and that definitely relates to safety. Now, as it happens right here near this east switch of Leiden, the spot that we're at, it actually falls within the Class Delta airspace for the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport, which is a couple of miles to our north. The airspace for that airport extends 5 miles. There's a 5-mile radius around that airport and extends from the ground up to 8,000 feet above sea level. And so we are within the boundaries of the airspace there. So in order to properly follow the rules, we cannot just simply launch the drone and send it over there to the east switch. To properly follow the rules, which we're going to do, we actually need to first get permission from air traffic control and the FAA to get authorization to launch our drone within the Class Delta airspace of the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at how we do that right now. We use an app to do that, and we're going to take a look at getting that authorization right now. Now that we're ready to launch our drone, we need to go ahead and figure out if we need to get authorization in order to launch it and submit that request for the authorization. To do that, we're going to use an app called AirMap on our iPhone. There are a couple of different apps that you can use for this, but AirMap is the one that I personally prefer to use, and we've got it shown on our display here. If we look over a little bit to the east, we can see where the tracks cross 80th Avenue. We can see our dot where we're located, and the tracks continue up toward 82nd Avenue there at the east switch of Leiden, for those of you familiar with the area. And as we scroll out a little bit here, we're actually going to go to the west, we can see Rocky, Highway 93 and whatnot. But as we scroll out a little bit more, we'll see this blue circle. And the blue circle here represents the airspace for the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport, which is a couple of miles to our north. And everything within that blue circle represents the airspace. We zoom in a little bit here and we can see the runways. And you'll also note that we have these grids. The way the FAA has done it, they have separated the airspace into these grids. There's a red line in the ones that we see right here, and the number 0. That basically indicates that if you are located within one of those grids, you are not allowed to launch your drone. Drone has to stay on the ground inside of those particular grid coordinates. As we zoom out a little bit here and maybe move a little bit to the west, for example, we'll find that there are some yellow bar grids, and they have different numbers in them. 100 or 400 is what we see here. That is basically indicating that we can lift off in those areas with authorization,
but we cannot exceed either 100 feet or 400 feet above the ground level if we do take off in those grids. So you can see the grid that we are in, that we're located in, we are allowed to go up to 400 feet above the ground. And as it turns out, that is also the highest that you can lift off anywhere, whether you are in a airport controlled airspace like this or uncontrolled airspace. The FAA has decided that 400 feet above the ground is the highest that you can fly a drone in the United States, unless of course you have authorization to go higher. But in general, recreational use, hobby use, 400 feet AGL or above ground level is the highest that you are going to be able to go. And as it happens, we are able to get up to 400 feet here. A little bit further north, and we would have lower or 0 foot restrictions, and we wouldn't be able to take off at all. But now that we know that we are good to go here, that we're able to get up to 400 feet, we're going to want to go ahead and make our request. Within AirMap here, down at the bottom, you'll see that we can swipe up and we get a whole bunch of information. We'll see that we have a whole bunch of rules. These are just reminders for the various things that we need to make sure that we are following. And we will also notice that we have an advisories tab. And this is going to show us controlled airspace that we may be in, airports like the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport that's nearby. If we're near any schools, it's going to warn us about that too. But you notice these advisories are all in yellow or orange. And so that means that we are able to lift off. These are all just warnings. If we were in an area where we were not allowed to lift off at all, then such as if we were a little closer perhaps to the airport there, then we would have red advisories and we would not be able to take off. So we've got 14 warning advisories, so we are allowed to take off. So as we come back down here, the next thing that we're going to need to do is actually submit our flight plan or indicate our flight plan as to where it is that we are planning on actually flying the drone. In order to do that, what we're going to do is press and hold on the map. So we're going to start where we are. We're going to press and hold on the map, and that is actually going to pull up a circular area. It's a circular flight plan. We could change the radius. We could expand it. It starts at that 500-foot default. We could expand that to be further if we had a radius that we were going to stay in. However, what I usually do when I'm out taking train pictures is, since the tracks kind of go in more of a linear direction rather than in a circular direction, I use this free draw tool. And you can see here I'm drawing the area that I intend to stay in. You just use your finger on your iPhone and you draw that area. So now I've indicated the boundaries in which I am intending to fly. I can modify it if I need to. If I need to go a little bit further east of Leiden, perhaps I could drag and drop and modify that airspace a little bit. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to just draw on there and indicate where it is you want to go. If I was planning on perhaps going down toward the west end of Leiden rather than just simply staying here at the east end, then I could actually drag and drop that further, or I would have zoomed out a little bit more to draw initially. But since we're just going to stick at the east end today, I'm pretty happy with this as being the boundaries of this particular flight. So the next thing I'm going to do is click Next up at the top. The next thing we're going to have here is the opportunity to specify our altitude. So we can go up to 400 feet, but maybe we're not planning to do that. Maybe we're planning to stay lower, and we could indicate that we're only going to go to 300 feet, for example. And we're going to go ahead and select 400. You'll notice that you can go higher. You could go up to 1,000 feet on this slider. That's just to make it compatible with other countries and their various authorizations. The FAA isn't going to authorize above 400 feet unless you have some sort of a special authorization. So we're going to leave that at 400 feet. We're also going to specify the time that our flight is planning to take. By default, it starts at 30 minutes. We could expand it up to 1 hour. We could expand it all the way up to 12 hours, and it could be as little as 15 minutes. For today, though, we're going to go ahead and leave it at 30 minutes. We've also got more information about the pilot, phone number, weight of the drone, whether or not we're going over people, whether or not we're going to remain in visual line of sight, things that are required, and just making sure that you acknowledge and authorize. As soon as we review all that, we're going to click Next. We're going to get a little weather briefing here to make sure that we're flying according to the rules, like you cannot fly within clouds, for example. So we're going to make sure that our settings are good there, our weather is good, and we're going to get a few more rules that we're acknowledging that we are following, and we can review all of those on here. And as soon as we're satisfied, we're going to hit Submit Flight. And that is actually going to now submit our flight to the FAA, and there we go. We've got success. It's been successfully submitted for the Rocky Mountain Metro. It says authorization is pending. We will get a text message indicating that it has been authorized. And you can see we now have a timer indicating how long since we first submitted it. We said we had up to 30 minutes. So there's our clock counting to that 30-minute window. And we're all set. We're able to now go ahead and lift off. We've got our authorization from the FAA, and the controllers at Rocky Mountain Metro Airport are aware. And we're able to lift off and head over there toward that east switch of Leiden.
Now that we've got our authorization with the FAA, we've got the drone out, we got it fired up, and we are ready to go. So we're gonna start it. You'll notice that we do get a warning about that Class Delta airspace. So if you didn't know you were in Class Delta airspace, it would give you that warning to give you an opportunity to file before you actually took off. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we are clear above the tree, well clear of those power lines, and we're going to head down toward that east switch of Leiden. I'm gonna keep an eye on my altitude there in the lower left-hand corner. You can see we're passing 70 feet, 80 feet, 90 feet. Now, there is a setting in the app that is configurable that lets you specify a top altitude. And I do have that set to be a few feet below 400 to make sure I don't exceed that 400-foot rule, but it's still a good idea to just keep an eye on your altitude at all times. I know it's hard to hear me here. So, I mean, as you guys can see, this is the actual what came out of the drone, the raw video footage that came out of the drone. The drone controller view, this is what I see when I'm looking down at my drone controller. I've got my altitude down here in the left, and I've got the distance away from me down here in the left. I'm obviously recording right now, and I've got my options for my shutter speed and aperture and whatnot, and I've got record time available down here as well. And that'll just give us an opportunity to kind of look around from up above, get a nice look at the approach into Leiden right there. We can see the neighborhood, we can see Ralston Valley High School, and we can look back west through Leiden too, all the way over toward the base of the Rockies and going up toward the Moffat Tunnel. So that just gives you guys a little bit of an idea here of what you need to do to make sure that you are both being safe and following the rules. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start bringing the drone back. One rule that is super important to follow is that you cannot fly over people unless you have their permission. So if there are pedestrians or bikers out, and even cars, it's important to make sure that you are not flying over those. You need to alter your flight path accordingly. So for example, if I wanted to pass 80th Avenue right here across the other side, I am on the ground, I'm looking both ways. No, it's see that I'm clear. So the question is, where is the audio coming from? I actually have an Apple AirPod in my right ear, and it's being used to record the audio. I don't want to go too far because I am getting close to power lines, and I want to make sure that I'm not running into any power lines. Sorry, I'm so hard to hear. It sounded a lot better in my headphones. And we can look down and we can see us down there on the ground. We'll go ahead and cross again. We've got no cars coming. And we'll look straight down in our view here. Now, obviously, I'm flying over myself because I give myself permission to do so. And we're going to go ahead and start coming on down. We're just going to make a straight down landing. As we look up, we'll make some adjustments here. We're well clear of the power lines. That's good. We know there's a tree here. I can see that I'm pretty well clear of the tree. So bring it in. That gives you a good idea for the prop noise. All right, we're good to go there. We got the drone on the ground. The last thing that we could do, if we're still within the time limit that we set up a 30-minute time limit. If we landed and we're done, we're not going to plan on going back up. I'm basically saying right now that since we were done within our 30-minute time limit, that we can cancel our flight. We can go back into that air map, and you can see you can end your flight before the time expires. We're on the ground, we are clear, and we're good to go. And that's really what it comes down to. That's what you need to look at when you are flying within controlled airspace, specifically airspace in an airport. You look at that air map. Here's Class Delta, but this applies all over the place. Class Delta, Class Charlie, Class Bravo airspace. Denver International Airport is a Class Bravo airspace around it. And the same thing applies. You can take off within Denver International Airport's airspace as long as you're not in one of those sectors that shows 0 for the maximum altitude allowed, and as long as you properly file and go through all the proper clearances. That's useful sometimes when I'm shooting out at Bar Lake. I think that's good, Nathan. It's just me talking, which is really hard to hear. Near the siding of Bar, and yeah, no, I think. Out there as well. Out there, you can only get up to 1 to 200. Thanks. Yeah, so I was mentioning at the end there, you couldn't really hear with the cars, is that Bar Lake, those pictures I showed you guys actually out at Bar Lake is within DIA's airspace. And so that authorization, I don't think I was allowed to go above 100 feet for that because it was so close to DIA. But you can still get some shots out there at Bar even though you're within the airspace. So that's kind of what I had for you guys. Just trying to, like I said, hopefully both show some, I hope, decent photos as well as do a little education on what is involved in the 21st century with trained photography or really any photography and drones. And I'm more than happy if you guys have questions. I think we have another mic for that too.
There we go. Give me just a second here for those of you online who would like to ask questions, because I see there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. I couldn't switch over while the presentation was running. Give me just a second here.
We just got to wait for Nathan for just a second here to make sure that we got everything set up. And then he will have a microphone so that everybody online can hear.
Hi, this is Andrew Ludassi, all the way from New Jersey. Where is Far Lake? Having been out there quite a few times to Colorado, but where is Far Lake?
Yeah, good question. So Bar Lake is, it's northeast of Denver along I-76, maybe 15 miles or so northeast of Denver. Bar Lake,
Okay.
yeah, B-A-R-R, Bar Lake.
Oh, Bar Lake, B-A-R-R. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, B-A-R-R, Bar Lake.
So is that oh, there it is. I see Bar Lake State Park. Okay.
Yep,
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, the other thing was it's interesting hearing this. Are you involved in drone work in any other in professional capacity?
I am not. This is strictly a hobby for me. In my professional life, I'm actually a software developer. So
because I've worked with I'm just about to retire actually at the end of the month I work for the New Jersey Department of Transportation, and we have a drone. A guy who was a pilot who was our drone, and I've worked with him. And you're right on with what an actual pilot does. So.
Oh, cool.
He had some kind of way though, because he was a pilot, he was able to override some of these FAA restrictions because he had some sort of blanket thing, but he still had to override it within the software of the drone.
Okay. Yeah. Now, to do this commercially, you have to have something called a Part 107 license, which is something that's issued by the FAA. There's a test you got to take and pass. It has a lot of information. It's kind of interesting, actually. There are, in some ways, more restrictions on commercial drone pilots than there are on hobbyists, because they're doing it professionally and they tend to fly in higher risk areas and whatnot. So that it's good information. Anybody can get a Part 107 license, even if you're just doing it as a hobby. It's not required, but you can if you just want to learn, even kind of take the next step and learn that much more about drone flying. You can do that.
Yeah, our rule was never to cross a road with a drone.
Yeah, no, that is important. If you saw, again, I apologize for the audio. I didn't realize it was going to come out quite that bad, but I did cross over 80th Avenue, and what I was saying as I was doing it is just making sure that there were no cars passing underneath me as I was flying underneath it. That's the most important thing. Don't fly over cars. Don't fly over people. And I make it a rule not to fly over cabs of trains that may have occupants in it. So. Questions online or in the room?
Great show. Thanks a lot.
It's a little bit morbid, but since we're talking about safety, I just happened to catch a 2020 the other day, and it was about a movie that was made. And you probably heard the story where the producer didn't even, he took everybody to a trestle, and he put Glenn on the bed, and then the train came. I just can't remember the name of the movie, and I just figured you're the guy to ask. Because I just saw it like last week.
I also do not remember. I know the event you're talking about. A film crew set up on an active train bridge without any kind of permissions or anything, and a train came along and struck one of the crew members. But I don't remember the name of the movie offhand.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty tragic.
Hello?
Is there formal training that you have to go through, or do you just apply for a certificate or a license and write a check?
Yep. So the training that you have to go through is absolutely none whatsoever. It's very intense. It's basically, you don't even have to have a certificate to be a drone pilot per se. If your drone weighs more than, I believe it's 0.65 pounds, I may be wrong on that, then you do have to register your drone with the FAA, and you'll get, in fact, I can show you on here. I did bring my drone, and I know this is going to be hard for people online to probably be able to see, but on the top of my drone right here, I just printed out my authorization number with the FAA as well as my phone number, in case somebody happens to find it. If it does fall out of the sky, somebody can find it and hopefully get in touch with me. But if it is more than a certain weight limit, like I said, I think that's just a little over half a pound, then you do have to, in order to legally fly it, you have to register it with the FAA. Beyond that, that's the only requirement as far as any formal training or certification. Once you've done that, you can legally fly it.
I've got a question. How do you know that you're under 400 feet?
So if you recall in the last video I showed, in the lower left-hand corner of the controller, it will show your altitude above ground. The catch, though, is that it shows the altitude above ground from where it took off. So the drone itself can't actually detect how high it may be above the ground that it is currently over. So to be completely honest, like I mentioned that shot at Tunnel 7, where I was over 1,000 feet above, quite frankly, that was just kind of a judgment call. And because the idea here, the reason that the FAA has put in that 400-foot rule is obviously you do not want to get high enough to where a drone could actually start interfering with a plane. Right now, unless like a Cessna, for example, a small plane, unless it's landing or taking off, it shouldn't be only 400 feet above the ground. It should be, 500, 1,000 or more feet above the ground. So 400 feet should be safe. And that's really what the FAA is going for. That's why, like, my drone, in terms of its capabilities, is actually capable of going up to 18,000 feet. Now, obviously, I can't do that. I can't go up 400 feet. It's technically capable of going higher than that. But so, like that shot at Tunnel 7, I didn't know exactly how far I was above the ground or the distance away from the mountain, but I knew because of where I was, there's not going to be a Cessna or a 737 coming through in that particular area. So I knew that I was flying safely. Okay, somebody online?
Yeah, hey, can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, hey, Kevin, this is William Deal. I just got my Part 107. You're talking about going across 80th Street there. From what they kind of taught me when I was doing that 107 training, you can go across a public street as long as you're transiting. I guess it goes with the idea that if the drone's falling out of the sky, chances are it might land on the other side of the street, but you're not allowed to hover over the street.
Okay.
That
makes sense. I wasn't aware of that specific language. That does make sense, that as long as you're not stopped over the street, even if your props fail, your momentum should carry you over to the other side of the street. So that's actually perfectly logical. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I'm coming back from the Cardinals game right now, and I hit a dead spot. You're talking about you're using your air map for your Lance authorization.
Yeah.
Is Air Map still able to do Lance, or because from what I understand, didn't the FAA terminate them?
If they have, I haven't heard about it, and the apps has still been functioning and has been giving me authorizations.
Relationship with that, or is that are they back on?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
The AirMap app still works for me, and it still is granting me authorization. So as far as I know, it's still working.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just heard you on that you say something about AirMap when I finally got reception again. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, and talk about, you can use stuff for a hobby, but even for, they're going after YouTubers for not having their 107s. So that's something to think about. If you're showing your work, don't monetize if you don't have a 107.
Yeah. I think monetizing on YouTube definitely qualifies for commercial use, and you cannot fly a drone commercially without a Part 107. So if you're doing anything to make money off of it, you have to have your Part 107. Fortunately, my YouTube page is not anywhere near enough views to actually allow me to be able to commercialize it. I don't know if that's necessarily fortunately, but that's the way it is. So I don't need to worry about that yet. I am interested in getting my Part 107, but I mentioned right now I'm trying to get my private pilot's license. So that's my priority for the time being.
Yeah, from my best guess, did you know that you were about 800 feet from that old water tower section house?
Yeah. I think about 800 feet. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep.
If you were there, you might have had a picture of it.
Anybody else? Questions online or in the room?
Yeah, I've got one.
Sure.
Jerry Davis, North Carolina. I was talking to my landscaper the other day. This doesn't have anything to do with trains, by the way. I was talking to my landscaper the other day and mentioned that I had heard about a fella who used his drone to blow the leaves off his roof so he wouldn't have to climb up on the roof. And I was wondering if the landscaper were to try to do that, would he have to have the 107 in order to be able to do that?
That is a fantastic question. I don't know the answer because you're not using the drone in the manner that it was necessarily meant to be used. So because you're not doing it to actually film anything, I don't know. That's a fantastic question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. That's a good question.
He charged me to do that. So, he's making money with his drone. So that would mean he has to have the 107, right?
So I have two guesses because I don't know the answer. My first guess is that he does have to have a Part 107. My second guess is that the FAA hasn't actually thought of that as being a use. And if they find out, you'll need to get a Part 107. I don't know which one it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I've discovered, I feel like there's a fair amount of crossover with people that are interested in trains that are also interested in like planes and flying. I found that to just kind of generally be true. So hopefully it wasn't too boring for everybody. Anybody else have any questions?
Just a comment. You showed the photos from the storage lines with the sit rail. Yesterday I was out taking some pictures with a new camera, and Canadian Nationals picked up a bunch of sit rail locomotives. They were patched and renumbered and relettered for CN, but not repainted CN.
They're finding some life after BNSF. That's good. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. I had a good time. I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Kevin. That's also really good points about how to be a responsible drone operator too, because I'm sure it'd be very easy to do everything wrong and put a lot of people in danger. Okay. I think Denny had something he wanted to say.
Well, I do. It's Christmas, and I've got a railroad book here. And was anybody in this group born on Christmas? How about in the month of December? Oh, you win twice, huh? Okay. This is a book, and I wanted to bring it and give it to somebody. So Merry Christmas. You're welcome. It's always nice when guests can win, I guess, huh? So anyway, I wrote a thank you in the rail report to my board, Dave and Keith and Andy, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have been able to be an officer in this place. And the board of directors, Mike Tonetti, and also the membership chairman, and Ron is here, and let's see, Pat's not here, Debbie McDonald, and I'm missing, who am I missing? Somebody? Yeah, and said Pat, huh? Yes. And Nathan. And also, thanks so much, Nathan, for all the audio visual and the Zoom. It's been kind of an interesting time. And it's so nice to be in a meeting again. And I hope we can continue to do them. And this hybrid meeting, there's some people that are able to join us. So hopefully we'll be able to continue to maybe dual broadcast, and that reaches out for the club a little bit further too. So anyway, we have some goodies to eat and socialize for a bit. Dave, have you got anything else?
No, I suppose we, did you want to say something, Kevin?
Real quick, I'll just mention, I know I apologize for those online. This doesn't apply to. For anybody in the room, if you do want to just come up and take a look at the drone, or if you have any questions about the drone itself, I did bring it and the controller. I forgot to mention that. So when we're all done and wrapped up here, if you're in the room and you want to come up and have questions or take a look at it, feel free to.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks again.
That
Kevin.
was fabulous.
Yeah. Good stuff. We've been fortunate to keep finding new and interesting programs. So, and as always, if for our members, if you have an idea for a program, get in touch with me. My contact info is on the front of the newsletter each month. I suppose we can end the Zoom for the cookies, right, Nathan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, unless you want to watch us eat
yeah.
through our masks and drink small cans of soda, I think we'll say bye-bye and happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas from Wisconsin. Have a good one and thank you.
Thanks again.
Yeah, hey, thanks for letting me in. Huh?
Even will deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yes, yes, we definitely should have a big thank you for Bruce Nall for all the work he does on our rail report every month too. You'll have to come back and see us some more.